Okay, we're back and we're heading on to tray number 2. So gonna start tapping. I'm gonna dot some purple right on because I am running out, and then I'm gonna go over it with the blue. So we're gonna hit the shuffle.
The first part of this double feature, I was talking about embracing the things that make us different. We often get caught up in fitting in that we forget our differences are what make us special. I feel like I shouldn't have to make this disclaimer, but it's the internet, so I will, and because I need it to be heard before we dive into this next episode. Being quirky, odd, or having a difference in opinion or perspective is not an excuse to be an asshole. I understand that in some cases, people, especially with mental health or personality disorders, may not always know that's how they are being perceived.
Gotta turn this one up.
But it's important not to weaponize these either. We do still have to take accountability, and we can't just blame our mental health issues for everything. We do still need to work to continue to improve our situations.
Wait for the beat drop.
Today we're talking about how we fight when disagreeing
Almost.
or taking issue with one another. As I was trying to take space from various situations, it ignited a lot of conflict in my life. I eventually stopped engaging because it would just get worse. It made me start looking at what the purpose of fighting in the first place was even for. Maybe because we live in a world of sensationalized headlines, hot tea, and reality TV drama. It's like we've lost sight of what we're fighting for because watching people fight has become entertainment. We might have forgotten what the actual purpose of airing grievances is, which is to acknowledge a problem, what steps can be taken to fix it, then working to correct, repair, or separate, heal, and either way, move forward with clarity. And if fights are just two people screaming at each other about who's right in circles until one concedes until it pops up again, but no one actually does anything to change, or if only one person is trying to change, then what's the point? Nothing gets solved, it's still going to be an issue, and it'll just collect resentment as interest. I find that most of us don't look enough at ourselves within an argument. Our default reaction is just to deflect. We have a hard time admitting where we're wrong or taking our egos out of the equation to make room for some accountability.
Happy 50th birthday, hip hop.
Most people aren't mind readers, and problems can't be corrected if they're not acknowledged or brought to the surface. Some of this requires being honest with ourselves and those we're beefing with too. And if you can't be honest about how you feel, you can't expect the root of the problem to be repaired. It'll get more dilapidated over time. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it does help us grow.
It's gonna be my wedding entrance song if I ever get married.
Or we can agree to disagree and all eat roast beef. If we're fighting to prove we're right on a regular basis in the same situations, we're either not being heard, not fighting for the right cause, or not in a healthy situation. Especially when it comes to relationships, whether familial, domestic, or friendships. If the goal is to win, you're not fighting for the relationship. You're fighting to get ahead in the relationship or have the upper hand in some way. But having healthy discussions about hard feelings with a goal of improving the situation leads to foundationally stronger, balanced relationships. Again, maybe it's because of sensationalized headlines and made for TikTok and TV drama,
What a great tune.
but having hard conversations doesn't always have to be an attack. There are a lot of people that struggle with taking constructive feedback. I truly just believe that we do what we know. That's why it's important to work to break the cycles. I just truly believe that most people don't know how to do it without being an attacker. Having been open about my mental health over the years, I find it challenging to have a tough but constructive argument with certain people. My previous mental state or episodes over the years
My girl. Love her so much. Jesse, thank you for what you're doing for Canadian R&B.
have often been used to discredit me, though it was also a time when I didn't have the same tools in my toolbox that I do now. So I used to react differently and often more volatile than I would do now at this stage in my life.
I also have these slate coasters that I wanted to do with this technique as well. So I'm going to do those before I get to the rest of the boxes. Okay, the Metallica Blacklist album is a really great compilation of artists covering their music. Miley Cyrus is fantastic in this, but there are also some other really good covers. Dermot Kennedy does Nothing Else Matters. Alessia Cara does Enter Sandman. The Reina Sawayama Enter Sandman is like the best on the whole thing, but this version Nothing Else Matters by Miley Cyrus is just so good. So I highly recommend checking it out.
I'm better able now to sit and reflect and meditate and really sort through my feelings before I react. The worst part is usually not even necessarily because I'm wrong,
Oh, such a good riff. Such a good riff.
but because there are a lot of people in the world
So good today.
that have a hard time with admitting they might be.
Story of my life.
Being asked if you've remembered to take your pills in the middle of an argument or discussion is about as infuriating as a woman being asked if she's PMSing in the same situation. Also, very common, and I'm sure there's a lot of men who can attest to how well that goes over. Having mental health issues in the past doesn't mean that I'm not doing better, and it doesn't mean that I haven't taken the time to learn a lot of techniques in order to combat those things as they arrive. And on a day when I'm having a bad day, it doesn't mean I'm not still in a good headspace. I am still allowed to have bad days. Growth is still a process, and healing is not linear.
This is a great segue from that No Doubt song because the ska has a lot of like horn section stuff. This song does too.
I always try to be mindful that everyone has their own perspective of the situation. And like I said in the last episode, there are a lot of cases where no one is technically wrong from their point of view. That's why it's important to try to put ourselves in each other's shoes before and going into these conversations. Before you make any bold moves, ask yourself how you would feel if someone was doing the same to you. This is why, even after everything I've been through, I try to show grace and understanding, at least now. I used to be a much more volatile personality for sure.
I first learned about Busy Signal because of No Doubt, but then I came to love Busy Signal because of Major Lazer, and now I actually listen to Busy Signal on his own. Just fun how some musicians get you on other musicians. Winding my bump upon the dance floor.
People feeling like they won't get the understanding for one thing can snowball into a giant clusterfuck. Some feel guilt and shame about it, and then they think they can't be redeemed, which is, more often than not, false, but they can fall deeper into a pattern of destruction if they don't get the right help.
Okay, now round one is done on all of the boxes, so I'm going to take a time out while those dry, and I'll be right back. Time for some shellac. What I'm going to do is I'm going to shellac around the outside. I'm going to do a picture in the middle, I think. So I'm going to shellac this and let it dry and then come back to it later. And this is where I'm at. This is a good tune.
How far a fight can go and how volatile it can be depends on what tools are in the toolbox, or toolboxes when there's multiple people involved. I'm just not confident that there are a lot of people that come from or were brought up in environments where they had access to the right tools, or think to handle a situation differently than they normally would, or feel like they feel weak or a burden in asking for help. Okay, second disclaimer, because I do understand how there could be some confusion. I have taken a little bit of heat for some of my poetry, but it's not to be perceived as negative. That's not the intent behind it. This is my truth. Some things may sound harsh, but what was done to me was also harsh by people that I knew and loved and trusted. A lot of opportunists on the bandwagon and no opportunity for me to defend myself. I also acknowledge through my poetry how I come to terms with situations that should have and were likely intended to break me. For the most part, it's just a matter of perspective.
I don't know if Americans have ever heard this song, but Kay is a Canadian artist and I don't think releases music anymore, but this was one of her more recognizable songs and it's just fun. At least these two, because it's only going to be shellac. The other one's going to have something on top.
I talk about the lessons I've learned and still give those who took these actions an opportunity to learn and grow, like I have.
It's funny that I got served 2 Sunday morning songs because it is, in fact, a Sunday morning as I'm recording this.
Whether or not they take it is up to them, since that's all I had needed when the roles were reversed. Defending yourself, especially when the actual consequences can be very serious that other people take towards you, and if they're under false pretenses, it's defending yourself. This is an important difference and another thing that seems to get lost in conversations about therapy. I did try like 5 different high roads first, but had enough of people playing with my life for their entertainment. I don't believe in an eye for an eye, but I do believe that writing out how you feel in a creative way does help you release those emotions. And since I've been writing poetry again and getting some of these things off my chest, I feel a lot better and I don't harbor as much resentment and I can better move forward with my life in a healthy way and give myself the closure that I felt that I needed. And what do you know? It worked. Accidentally started a rap beef though. This is why it's so important for us to pick our battles and ask ourselves what we're really fighting for. The answer really should be growth. And if not, what is it? We're always talking, but do we really hear each other? What we're asking for in an argument, what we're willing to give in return. What are the sacrifices that we are willing to make to keep the peace? And what are deal breakers? These are important questions that you need to ask. For every action, there's a reaction, and we can only control ours. And now my weekend bender of crafts is complete. This is what the one photo box looks like. It's got the iridescent shimmer on the inside. I mixed 3 of them together to match the colors I used on the outside of the box. These are the outside of the boxes in better light. The slate coasters turned out really cool, super sparkly. This is my serving tray that I painted a picture on, and it's gonna go on my living room table now. Thanks for hanging out. Until next time, keep the peace and keep rocking on.